These are the top 9 mistakes that I see tourists make when traveling abroad for the first time. As someone who's just started traveling a couple years ago and has been all over the world, I came to this list from talking to people in hostels, hotels, and in my own personal experience making a lot of these mistakes. If you like this sort of informative travel content, be sure to subscribe, and now let's get right into it. The first mistake I see, and this is a big one, and it has to do with your preparation before you get to wherever you're going, and that's not understanding the transportation situation. Understanding how to effectively use transit, be it public or private, might be one of the most important factors in ensuring you have a fun trip. If you can navigate efficiently through a place, that means more time for doing things you like, more money for eating at interesting places or doing other things. So just understanding your transportation system is hugely important. Some places public transit is amazing, and some places it's not. For instance, I went to Hong Kong for 2 whole weeks, and I didn't once use a private taxi or a car. I was able to use public transit the entire time just because that system is just that organized and efficient. However, when I was in Peru traveling around with my brother, there is not very good public transit. On the other hand, Uber is extremely cheap. You can get a 40-minute Uber ride for about $3. So why even bother trying to mess with the public transit? Like I said, this is going to vary a lot place to place, but you want to do some research on this before you get there to ensure that you understand how to get around. If you do show up to a place and you're a little ill-prepared and you don't understand how the transit works, my best way I've found to figure it out is just to ask a server at a restaurant or maybe the concierge at your local hotel. These are people that are local. They understand how to navigate their own city, and they're going to be able to give you good advice, not only on how to get places efficiently, but also what you should expect to pay for things. Taxis will sometimes try to hike up a price. Ubers will sometimes try to hike up a price. Talking to locals and getting their opinion on pricing is a great way to avoid getting scammed. I always like to call ahead to the hostel or hotel I'm staying at and ask somebody how much I should pay to get from the airport to their hostel. That's a place that you're frequently going to find people hike up prices because you've gotten off a long flight. You have very little patience. You're more likely to just pay a higher price, but sometimes it's just downright gouging. It could be 2 or 3 times what you should be paying for a taxi right out the airport. So I would call ahead and just make sure you know approximately what you should be paying for that transit from the airport to wherever you're staying. The second mistake we're going to talk about, and these are in no particular order, is going to be trusting Google or social media over local advice. 9 times out of, actually make that 10 times out of 10, I'm going to take the word of a local person who's been there and lives there over Google reviews. And this could come on the form of restaurants, things to do, transportation, like the last one. Sometimes Google will lead you astray transportation-wise, but always trust local advice over the advice of the internet. I find this a lot when I'm reviewing restaurants, that I'll go to a place that might have 3 stars on Google or bad Google ratings, but all the locals love it. And a lot of times what that's due to is there's maybe some custom or some practice for ordering, getting your food. There's some tradition that maybe people don't understand, tourists don't understand. And so they'll go there and they'll have a bad experience just because they were either ignorant to this or didn't fully understand the customs around going to a certain place. And they'll have a bad experience, they'll rate it poorly, and that kind of reflects in the Google rating. But that's not necessarily an accurate representation of how good the place is. There was a place I ate in Spain called El Brillante. It had, I think it was a 3-star Google rating. And a lot of the reviews had to do with the servers being rude. They didn't know how to order. There's a lot of that from tourists. And I went there and had a fantastic time. I found that people were curt. I wouldn't say rude, but it was a fast-paced environment. You needed to know what you wanted to order before you got there. But overall, it was bustling. I had a fantastic time, and I would definitely recommend somebody go there. But I found there was a lot of misunderstanding in that restaurant's Google page, and maybe if I had listened to the Google page over local advice, I would have never had that great restaurant experience. Mistake number 3, and this is a really big one, an important one to pay attention to, is bringing up unsavory topics. While traveling in other countries, there's a few basic topics that you should never bring up. The first is going to be politics. In America, we treat politics as entertainment. We make jokes. That is not the case in most countries. In most of the countries, they take their politics very seriously. You can't make fun of politicians the way we can in America. And they're going to take huge offense if you're cracking jokes about their politics. And the locals are going to be very offended as you have no right to talk about their politics one way or another. The next topic you should never bring up in another country is tragic historical events. The classic example is don't bring up the Holocaust in Germany unless you're, in a place that's appropriate, like a museum or something. When I was in Colombia, I was told at length, do not bring up Pablo Escobar or any of the violence that occurred in the 80s. Lots of people had family that had died, and while that might be dramatized in movies in the United States. That's a very real event that happened there. The comparison that was always made was bringing up Pablo Escobar in Colombia is a lot like bringing up 9/11 in America. It's just something that you probably shouldn't do. The last topic you don't want to bring up in a casual conversation abroad is points of religious contention. There's lots of points that pretty much all the major world religions agree on. Stick to those. You're not going to convert anybody by arguing with them. You're just going to make a fool of yourself. Obviously, you can't expect to be in another country for very long without getting into a conversation about politics, history, or religion. My advice is just to avoid being the one who brings these up and have an attitude that you're there to learn and listen, not to teach or condemn anyone. Mistake number 4 is going to be assuming everyone speaks English. While English is the most widely spoken language in the world, it's not the preferred language in most countries. So you might be thinking, what if I only speak English? How am I supposed to get around? My advice in that is twofold. First off, when you go to another country, learn the words for please, thank you, and bathroom. You'll be amazed how well you can get around on just those 3 words. I've been to numerous places, Czech Republic being one of them, Hong Kong being another, where lots of people didn't speak English, and if you just know the basic words in their local language for please, thank you, and bathroom, you're pretty much good to go. My second piece of advice is just try to speak the local language. Now, whether that's having a little guidebook with some local phrases, using Google Translate on your phone or another app, I've found that if you just try to speak the local language, it shows respect for the culture you're in, and it shows that you don't feel that you're entitled to have someone speak English to you. There have been numerous times I've gone up to random people on the street locally, tried to speak the local language, and turns out they spoke perfect English. But they've always preferred and found it very respectful that I tried to speak the local language first. You're going to have a lot easier time finding people to help you if you're as respectful as possible in another country. Remember that you're a guest there. Next mistake, number 5, and this is a very simple one, is not wearing a fanny pack or a crossbody bag to store your valuables in. One of the most expensive mistakes you can make traveling abroad is getting pickpocketed, getting your phone, passport, or wallet stolen. In the United States, pickpocketing is not very common, but it is super prevalent in most other parts of the world. By wearing a crossbody bag or a sling of some kind, you're putting as many layers as possible, and preferably zippered up layers, between a pickpocket's hand and your phone. You might be thinking, well, I'll just keep my hands in my pockets, my pants have deep pockets, whatever. Trust me, pickpockets are professionals. Some of these people, that's all they do all day is pickpocket people. That's how they make a living. Don't risk it. Just get a crossbody bag or a fanny pack, zip your valuables up, and be safe. Mistake number 6, and this one is the one that's all too common, and that is not eating local. The great Anthony Bourdain once said, if you're not willing to risk the bad meal, you'll never have the great one. I've eaten plenty of bad meals abroad, terrible meals in fact, but I can assure you the great ones I've had have made up for it tenfold. That's not to say you can't, go get a hamburger from McDonald's or something abroad every now and then. I found when I'm traveling abroad for extended periods of time, sometimes you just want a little food that sits easier on your stomach, something your stomach's used to. Go get your McDonald's, get your KFC, whatever, but try as best as possible to keep eating local. It's only a matter of time before you discover a fantastic restaurant, a fantastic dish, or just have an overall great experience eating out local. Number 7 is going to be overpacking, or what I call fear packing, where you pack things, maybe multiple things you don't need just because you're scared you won't have it. My word of advice on this is very simple. Understand that other people live in other countries all the time with no access to stores back in the States, and they're totally fine. You don't have to worry about forgetting your toothpaste. There will be a store with toothpaste where you can get it, presumably sometimes a lot cheaper than the United States. So don't fear pack. Don't overpack just because you're scared you won't have access to certain things in other countries. A few of my rules that I like to follow that help me to keep from overpacking is, first off, very simple, don't pack things you don't need, except maybe travel documents, and depending on where you're going, a first aid kit. First aid kit would be the exception of packing something you're not gonna use, because hopefully you won't have to use a first aid kit, but you'd be glad if you had it. Second is, don't pack 2 things that accomplish the exact same goal. Don't pack slides and flip-flops. You see this a lot with clothes. I like to pack, one long sleeve shirt, one short sleeve shirt. I won't pack 5 short sleeve t-shirts just because that's multiple items that don't accomplish a different goal. And then third, if you've done those first 2 things, pack things that can accomplish multiple things. I'm not talking, a Leatherman multi-tool maybe, or something crazy like that. It doesn't have to be an item that does 50 different things, because that normally falls under the category of things you don't need. The best example I can think of a good item that accomplishes multiple tasks is I've got this beanie that has a light attached to it. Now, normally I take some kind of hat to keep my head warm, and a flashlight or a full-size headlamp. Now that accomplishes both those things, saves me a little bit of room in my pack. Mistake number 8 is going to be over-planning, and by this I mean making a huge itinerary that's color-coded. You see this all the time where you'll have usually it's with families. You've got a color-coded itinerary where 10 different days, every hour of every day is planned. I'm going to let you know, when it comes to other countries, there's just too much unpredictability to be able to schedule that far out and with that precision. By the end of day 2, there's going to either be an activity that got canceled, there's going to be an activity you thought you wanted to do that maybe you don't want to do anymore, there's going to be something you found that's really cool that you didn't budget in time for, and then your whole schedule is going to be a bust and you're going to be frustrated. Instead, my advice, pick the activities that you actually have to be there at a specific time for. Maybe this is a historical site where you can only be there from, 2 to 4 p.m. and you've got tickets for that time slot. Schedule out those activities where you've got a specific time slot and then let everything else kind of fall naturally, go with the flow, and just, wake up, decide what you're going to do that day, and then maybe before you go to bed the next night, get with your group and decide, what do you want to do the next day. Planning multiple days out, I just find is a little cumbersome and it never really ends up the way you want. Now, mistake number 9, this might be a little ironic on this video because I've just told you all these things to avoid, but I don't want y'all to be scared if you're a first-time traveler. We're all going to make mistakes. How I came to making this video is I've made most of these mistakes in the past. That's part of the fun. That's part of the adventure of traveling. So mistake number 9 is going to be worrying about making mistakes or worrying about adhering to every single cultural norm. When you're in another country, there's no possible way, no matter how much you research, you're gonna know everything. So don't worry about, maybe you make a mistake in the transit and you end up losing a whole day. You bring up something you shouldn't have brought up. We've all made all of these mistakes, and it's just going to happen. Mistake number 9 is worrying too much about having the perfect trip. Something is going to go wrong in your trip, and that's just part of the adventure. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, this has been one of my harder videos to make, not necessarily because of anything editing wise, but just because I've had to make all these mistakes to know these mistakes to avoid. Like I said, I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope you get something out of it, and maybe you can avoid making one of these mistakes I've made. If you enjoyed this kind of informative travel content, be sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.